Next up, we bring in a man who's one of my personal favorite handicappers / handicapping authors. He wrote a book a few years ago that's still probably the best place to begin for horse players looking to learn more about the game, called Handicapping 101. He also covers California regularly for the DRF, and he is a big part of their excellent Breeders' Cup coverage. We're going to talk about that with Brad Free. Brad, how are things going, my man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on today. And, you know, you referred to Handicapping 101. Every now and then I kind of kick myself and say, maybe I need to go back and reread one of those chapters, because making mistakes is part of being a horse player. And sometimes you need to brush up on your basics. So I appreciate the plug and looking forward to some conversation with regards to Santa Anita and the Breeders' Cup.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about the Breeders' Cup package specifically. You guys, not unlike us at In the Money Media, you have a ton of stuff that's free on the website, drf.com. And then for folks that want even more information, there's a way you can dive deep and do that. And you're across it all, as I understand it.
Yeah, we started our Breeders' Cup weekly coverage in early October. And every Friday, we come out with revised odds. I do the Saturday prices for the 9 races on Saturday. David Aragona prices the 5 Breeders' Cup races on Friday. As far as I know, I think the Daily Racing Form is the only publication, at least in the U.S., that comes out with these early odds. And I know that from a handicapping and betting perspective, that's what people want to know. What price is my horse going to be? And, you know, we're weeks out still, but I think we've got a pretty good gauge of where the money eventually is going to flow. So every Friday, new odds and new coverage for all 14 Breeders' Cup races, from correspondence from coast to coast. This is a real fun and busy time of year.
And you get the opportunity to, I'm sure, browsing those pages to see the information about the extra content and coverage you can get through the advance from DRF. Is it as simple as just navigating to drf.com for those that are interested in finding more info about that?
Yeah, as far as I know, and I believe we have a special publication coming out maybe a week and a half before the Breeders' Cup. The Breeders' Cup Advance Edition, which will, again, include revised odds. And I will be writing a comprehensive story to kind of address maybe some of the nuances of Santa Anita, if there are any. And I'm not convinced that there are, but just what bettors might look forward to when they come out to Santa Anita, or their money comes to Santa Anita. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened the last Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita in 2019. Pete had a horrible mistake that I made that I don't mind talking about, because that's how you learn, right? Acknowledging your mistakes.
So, definitely. Let's go right there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's Santa Anita. This is the 11th time the Breeders' Cup will be run in Arcadia. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no more picturesque, beautiful racetrack than Santa Anita. I am biased and prejudiced. I get that. I grew up in Santa Anita virtually, but where else can you see these gorgeous San Gabriel Mountains in the background? The grounds itself, the Santa Anita grounds itself, with a huge paddock and walking ring, gorgeous statues of Zenyatta and Seabiscuit, and my favorite, John Henry. It is a wonderful place to hang out, a wonderful place to watch and bet on the races. I don't think there's a subpar sight line from anywhere in the grandstand, and I've been all over that place. You can see every single race from start to finish, no matter where you sit. I used to sit up at the top of row M in the grandstand with my buddies way back decades ago. That's where we watched all the races, and you could see everything. It's a fun place to watch the races and a great venue for the Breeders' Cup. So I'm glad we're back at Santa Anita for the Breeders' Cup. And there's a lot of things that I know people look at the racetrack, they go, well, you know, what the speed hold, or can you win from behind? I always want to remind people that every racetrack, no matter where you're at, has some nuance to it. However, the handicapping fundamentals do not change. Condition, class, pace, and speed are the building blocks of handicapping, and they are as relevant in the Breeders' Cup as they are in a $10,000 climbing race, at Golden Gate Fields. So yes, there are some nuances that regards to Santa Anita. And, while we're talking about that, I'll go ahead and acknowledge the mistake I made. 4 years ago, Pete, the Santa Anita Fall meet, they slowed the racetrack down so it was deep and slow and tiring, and the final times were horribly slow, like we've never seen on dirt at Santa Anita. And I kind of speculated, at least, that the possibility that maybe horses who had raced over the Santa Anita track, raced and or trained at Santa Anita, might have the advantage over horses that were shipping in. I didn't say they would, but it's something that I was extremely cognizant of. I thought the home team might have an advantage because they were more accustomed to this deep, slow, tiring track. Well, in 2019, there were 7 races run on dirt at Santa Anita. 6 of them were won by horses whose most recent start was out of the state. So I was so flat wrong. I don't mind being wrong about an idea, but I allowed it to kind of color my handicapping, and it was a huge mistake. I think I ended up having a losing weekend. No big surprise there, but it's something that you just have to recognize. I'm not going to make that same mistake again this year. I'm going to rely on the fundamentals of handicapping, and I want to at least acknowledge that the racetrack in 2023 is so completely different than the one we saw 4 years ago during the fall meet, the last time the Breeders' Cup was here. This year, the Santa Anita main track is fast. It's quick. Sprint races are about 4/5 of a second faster this year than they were 4 years ago. And the route races are anywhere from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds faster. It's a fast, quick track. What does that mean as far as bias and track profile? I don't really think it means anything. It just means that the track is fast. And if there's a pace duel up front, closers still can win. But it's a different surface than what we saw 4 years ago, regardless of how the surface is. I'm not going to allow any secondary factors to prejudice my handicapping of these top class races.
And I love that idea, because you definitely don't want to overcorrect the last mistake either. You don't want to go necessarily this time and say, oh, I'm looking for all out of towners. What you want to do is rely on those fundamentals and play the ball as it lies, essentially, is what I'm hearing you say. But there are a couple of things that are unique about the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita that I do want you to address. Mainly Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. The earlier runnings of it at Santa Anita were down the hill. We've seen, I think, one running of it at the flat 5 furlongs. I do think that could have a major impact. And, you know, Europeans don't historically have the greatest mark at in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint anyway. And I worry about some of them just getting caught out. Horses coming over here with gaudy figures and looking on paper like they should be great, but then having to address the reality of trying to go that sharp 5 at Santa Anita. For me, that's one where I'm going to give the benefit to the Caravels, to the Big Invasions. The horses that I'm comfortable are going to be able to do that. Just a hypothesis, but curious to get your thoughts on the 5 furlong configuration.
Yeah, well, just to start it off, I'm disappointed that we're not running turf sprints at 6.5 down the hill. To me, it's one of the most gorgeous layouts in all of racing, and it brings together 2 divisions. It can turf milers and turf sprinters. Neither division has an advantage over one another. I think the best horse wins 6.5 down the hill more than any other race. As far as 5 furlongs on grass goes, look, it's an absolute crapshoot, and I've done a little bit of research, and I was surprised to learn over the last 2 years there have been only 7 turf sprints at Santa Anita at the distance of 5 furlongs with the rails down. So when we're looking at what types of horses win 5 furlong grass races, we have a sample size of 7 races. The rails are going to be down at 0 on Breeders' Cup weekend for the Breeders' Cup turf sprints because they want to widen the course and get as many starters as possible into that race. So it's a very small sample size. And here's what I found out from this, again, a tiny sample. One of the 7 was won gate to wire. One of them was won by a horse in 2nd position, another from 3rd position, and 4 of the 7 races run under the configuration that we're going to see Breeders' Cup weekend. 4 of the 7 were won by horses rallying from the back of the pack. My point is, I was kind of expecting, well, maybe these gassy, sprint, blazing speed horses are going to have an advantage. Hardly the case. More than half the winners rallied from the back. So it's going to be very interesting to see, how these fields come together, what the pace scenario looks like. I'm not going to lean one way or the other as far as, what style of running style I'm going to prefer. We have to first wait and see what happens. I think there's some pretty good turf sprinters coming from overseas. And I wonder, I'm not sure about this. I wonder if the idea of the Breeders' Cup to shorten it from 6.5 down the hill to 5 furlongs might have been a consideration that they were offering some of the European horses, because European horses can do and often do run 5 furlongs overseas. So we'll see how these races come together, but 5 furlongs on grass, it's played fair from that really small sample size that we've talked about.
Great stuff, Brad, about the specifics of Santa Anita as a Breeders' Cup host site.